I feel like I'm old enough to do this on my own now. Oh, you're serious? Yeah. E, M, F, P, V, and W. I started out learning those certain letters because they were the hardest. What I do basically is I substitute other letters to replace the letters. You're an avid reader. This is actually a very correct assumption. I love to read. I'm actually reading this book right now. Shout out to my book sitting on my bed. I actually love to read. I mostly like...
The lights burned too bright that night. The crowd screamed her name again and again. A young girl stood smiling, calm on the surface. But inside, something felt painfully off. Her hands held a puppet, soft and familiar. But her chest felt heavy, almost too heavy. Millions saw her as a miracle child. A voice so pure, it felt unreal. A talent that made grown adults cry instantly. A smile that looked like perfect happiness. But smiles can hide more than they show. And applause can bury the deepest pain. Nobody saw the silence after the stage lights. Nobody heard the quiet behind closed doors. Because fame came fast, too fast to process. And childhood slipped away without warning. She became the girl everyone adored overnight. But love from strangers fades without notice. It disappears when the spotlight moves on. And that's when the truth begins to rise. That's when silence screams louder than applause. That's when the real question starts to hurt. What happens when childhood ends too early? Before the spotlight, she was just a quiet girl. A girl who struggled just to speak out loud. Words didn't come easy in those early days. Her voice would shake. Her body would freeze. Even small crowds felt overwhelming and scary. Even speaking felt like a painful climb. Other kids laughed freely without thinking twice. But she stayed back, watching from far away. Something inside her felt trapped and locked. Something that wanted out, but stayed hidden. And that silence slowly became her cage. It shaped how she saw herself and others. It made her feel small, different, invisible. But then, everything shifted one unexpected day. A simple puppet changed her entire world. It gave her a voice she never had. Through it, she could finally speak freely. Through it, she could finally feel safe. And for the first time, she felt heard. It was no longer just a simple toy. It became her shield from a loud world. It became the only place she felt safe. But here's the truth. Even safe places can turn into cages. As time passed, her voice grew stronger. Her confidence built slowly, piece by piece. She practiced when no one was watching her. She sang when the world felt too quiet. And something rare began to take shape. A talent people couldn't easily forget. A voice that could move hearts deeply. But talent doesn't prepare you for fame. It doesn't prepare you for pressure either. And she had no idea what was coming. Because one decision changed everything forever. A choice that pulled her far from normal life. Far from childhood. Far from simple days. She stepped onto a stage that changes lives. A stage millions only dream of reaching. And in that moment, everything felt possible. She walked out with quiet, steady confidence. The judges didn't expect what came next. Nobody in that room expected what followed. A small girl holding a puppet, ready to sing. It seemed simple, almost easy at first. But then, the first note left her mouth. And the entire room shifted instantly. It wasn't just singing anymore. It felt deeper, almost impossible to explain. Her voice didn't match her young age. It carried emotion far beyond her years. The audience froze, completely stunned. The judges leaned forward, eyes wide open. And within seconds, everything exploded. Cheers, tears, shock filled every corner. It was the moment that changed everything. The moment the world learned her name. Darci Lynne. And just like that, everything changed overnight. Fame rushed in like a powerful storm. Interviews, cameras, endless attention surrounded her. People wanted more every single day. More performances, more magic, more perfection. And she gave everything she had inside. She smiled, performed, amazed everyone watching. But here's the truth. No one asked how she felt inside. No one saw the pressure building quietly. Because success looks perfect from the outside. But inside, it can feel like sinking slowly. Her life changed faster than she could understand. Normal days vanished almost overnight. School became distant, almost unfamiliar. Friends slowly became harder to hold on to. Everything became about performing and being perfect. And perfection is a dangerous expectation, because it leaves no room for mistakes. No space to just be human. And she was still just a child. A child trying to understand herself. But growing up in front of millions is harsh. It's not kind, it's not forgiving. It's loud, constant, and demanding. But then everything changed. The excitement slowly began to fade away. The pressure grew heavier with each passing day. Expectations became impossible to escape from. Every performance had to beat the last one. Every moment had to be flawless. And perfection started to feel like a prison. Something felt wrong deep inside her. But she couldn't explain what it was. She kept smiling, because people expected it. She kept performing, because they demanded it. But inside, something was quietly breaking. And this is where it gets worse. The world doesn't slow down for anyone. New stars rise every single day. New talents take over the spotlight quickly. And suddenly, attention begins to shift away. The same crowd that once screamed her name becomes quieter, colder, more distant. And that silence feels heavier than failure. Because it forces you to question everything. Was any of it truly real? Did they ever really care? For her, this moment felt confusing and painful. She wasn't ready for this side of fame. The part where everything slows down. The part where people quietly move on. The part where you're left alone again. But this time, it hurt even more. Because she wasn't that same girl anymore. She had tasted the highest level of success. She had felt the power of attention. And losing even a small piece of that feels like losing part of yourself. Nobody expected this side of her story. Nobody talks about what happens after winning. They celebrate the moment of victory, but ignore the weight that follows it. She began questioning who she really was. Was she just the girl with the puppet? Or something more beneath all of that? Was her voice truly her own? Or shaped by what people wanted? And these questions don't come with answers. Days felt longer, heavier, more confusing. The same passion didn't feel the same anymore. The stage no longer felt like home. Something inside her was shifting deeply, and she didn't fully understand it yet. But here's the truth. Fame doesn't teach you who you are. It teaches you who others want you to be. And breaking away from that hurts deeply. There were moments she felt completely alone. Even in rooms filled with people around her. Even with cameras capturing every movement. Because loneliness doesn't need silence to exist. It lives quietly inside you. And that's what she started to feel. A quiet, growing loneliness every single day. But then, something changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't happen in one big moment. It started small, almost invisible. She began listening to herself again. Not the audience. Not the judges. Not the expectations. Just herself. And that's when something powerful clicked. She wasn't just a moment on a stage. She wasn't just a memory people shared. She was still growing, still becoming someone new. Still searching for meaning beyond the spotlight. And this realization wasn't easy at all. It came with tears, doubt, and confusion. But it was honest and real. She started finding her voice again. Not through the puppet anymore. Not through constant performance. But through understanding who she really was. And that is the hardest journey. Because facing yourself means facing everything. The fear, the pressure, the expectations. The version the world created for you. But also the real version underneath. The girl who just wanted to be heard. The girl who once feared speaking out loud. The girl who found comfort in something simple. And that girl never disappeared. Not gone. Not broken. Just buried beneath everything else. And slowly, she found her way back. It didn't happen quickly or easily. It took time, patience, and strength. Because healing is never fast. It's slow, quiet, and often painful. But it's necessary to move forward. She learned success doesn't define your worth. And failure doesn't erase who you are. She learned being human is enough. And maybe, that was the real lesson. Because the world will always demand more. More talent, more perfection, more performance. But one question changes everything. What do you want for your own life? And that question changes your entire path. For her, it became a turning point. Not away from her gift, but toward her truth. Toward understanding who she really is. Not just in front of millions, but in quiet, unseen moments. And that's where real strength lives. Not in applause. Not in fame. But in honest, silent moments. Moments where you face yourself fully. And choose to keep going anyway. Because life doesn't end when the spotlight fades. It begins again. In a deeper way. A more honest way. And maybe that's the part people miss. The part after the fame they remember. The part where the real story truly begins. And maybe that's what matters most. Because behind every success story, there's a human story underneath. A story filled with struggle, doubt, and growth. A story that continues long after applause fades. And her story is still being written. Not just as a performer, but as a person. And maybe that's what truly matters. Not how loud the world cheers for you, but how deeply you understand yourself. What do you think about this?